World War II left damaging effects on the northeast of Britain. With the introduction of conscription in 1940, the manual workforce was depleted, and women had to step up and take their places in ammunition factories and shipyards. But even with all of these terrible circumstances, it proved that Britain, and in particular the northeast, could come together and work together.
Aye, it's been a real battle to get that one away. But we'll have to have some more men in this yard.
Where will we get them?
Where were the men? Royal Northumberland Fusiliers, Tobruk, El Alamein.
All men between the ages of 18 and 51 years old were called forward to serve under the National Service Act, seriously depleting the country's workforce. It quickly became evident that the roles of women would have to shift from the domestic to more masculine and dangerous roles in support of the war effort. They were vital in propping up the industrial heartland and the emotional stability of the country.
Women were extremely important. They're important for two reasons. One is the war effort itself. So they are pulled into factories, and they do jobs that men who are now at the front had previously done. Women are absolutely front and centre to the war effort during the Second World War, because the home front is as much the war front as the enemy lines are. I mean, a lot of women had always worked in factories and had always done manual work on farms and that kind of thing, but during the war a lot of that gets broken down, and women are required to leave the home, and they're encouraged and in fact sometimes compelled to leave the home and do these jobs. So it's really important that mothers and that single women that they participate and see their role is as vital as the man in uniform who's in an aeroplane or who's in a tank. The war cannot be won without the support of ordinary citizens, and women make up the bulk of ordinary citizens.
Today you will find women at work in the shipyards, side by side with the men, in nearly every branch of shipbuilding. Many of them had never been near a ship a year ago. Today they're building them. For there's work to be done on the Tyne, and whatever your age or sex, there's a job where your skill is needed.
There is no doubt that women were vital in the war effort, but the Victorian ideals still lingered over them, and they faced stiff opposition and discrimination from some pockets of men.
Both wars bring women into places where they'd previously been excluded. So what people often say is that women proved that they had the ability to do these things, but a lot of women knew they had the ability to do these things. So, but there was a resistance, obviously, in certain parts of the population, because it threatened the territory of certain people. But also, one of the battles that's fought during the war is around the idea of femininity. A lot of the work women had to do was very difficult, but they were seen as having an absolutely vital role at a national level, not just at a domestic level. And yes, you can't take that back. And after the war, it is no longer possible to tell women they can't, or they're incapable of doing things. So you can peddle the prejudices, but there's evidence to say the other.
The Second World War tested domestic life just as it did the industrial powers of Britain. Air raids devastated houses, and masses of people were evacuated in air raid shelters and away from their families.
It's extraordinary, really. Within the first week of the war, 3 million children were evacuated, 1.5 million on the government scheme, and 2 million, so 3.5 million and 2 million privately. That had a huge impact. They didn't know where they were going, and they tended to be working class kids. They tended to be poor families from the inner cities, who were part of the government evacuation scheme. In terms of a safety issue, in terms of aerial bombardment, the important thing is to get those children out of the way.
Anne de Menzies was a child evacuee during the war, and she was kind enough to share her experiences with us and recount some of the emotions she felt.
I was evacuated in World War II to a place in Cumbria, and I was evacuated along with my sister and my brother, who were 5-year-old and 8-year-old. I can remember Mum crying at the window as we walked away. We all gave her cuddles and kisses, and we walked away. And I can remember what I was dressed in, because I had a new coat and hat and shoes. and we each had a little carrier bag, brown carrier bag, and our gas masks over our necks on a string. We went everywhere with our gas masks. I remember being a bit excited really, rather than frightened. At the end of the journey, we were all taken into a huge church hall, it seemed like, in Workington in Cumberland. And we all had to stand in a line, and the billeting officers walked round and choosing which children would go where. And we watched my brother being taken away by an old lady, and we didn't know where he had gone, so we clung together, Therese and I, holding hands, and this couple pointed us out and said they would take us. The man who adopted us with his wife, he used to give piano lessons in their front room, and they trained us to go to the door when a pupil was due, and to open the door and take the pupil's coats and show them into the room, and they bought us clothes, outfits, like coat and hat and shoes. So I think we did sort of settle into their lives. And I can remember when I heard we were coming home, I remember being excited. Say, you know, you go home with your mum and dad, and you go and see your new baby sister, you know, and she'll be there. And I remember being excited at that.
The repercussions of the Second World War are immense. Nearly 500,000 British people die, the economy is exhausted, and a massive rebuilding project begins on the home front. But it still holds weight today. We are still learning and taking stock of the courage and heroics of the ordinary citizen.
I'm in a friendship group at church, and we often talk, we're all about the same, around the same age, and we often get back to talking about the war. It's amazing, you know, whatever we're discussing, somehow World War II comes into it, you know, so it's still affecting us.